The most electrifying new anime franchise of the 2020s isn't even from Japan. The source material isn't a manga, rather a Chinese web novel. Lord of the Mysteries is the first anime in a very long time to get me this excited. This is coming from someone who was extremely skeptical about Lord of the Mysteries anime adaptation when it was first announced. For years, I had heard that Lord of the Mysteries was the pinnacle of web novels, with countless lists having it as the undisputed king of the medium. I heard seemingly outlandish claims about Lord of the Mysteries from its cult-like following, such as Lord of the Mysteries having better world building than One Piece and a more thorough power system than Hunter x Hunter. I usually dismiss these claims since it's bog standard for enthusiastic fans to gas up a new anime by comparing it to established hits, but some of these claims were coming from voices I heavily respected. People I know who have read more manga and books than I have, people who are extremely picky with what they like and will drop anything at a moment's notice, were telling me that Lord of the Mysteries was a thrilling story whose scale was like no other. Despite all this praise, I maintain my skepticism towards its potential anime adaptation. So what if it's an incredibly popular, well-respected series that has the potential to become one of the biggest animated media franchises in the world? Time and time again, I've seen announced anime adaptations for media that fit this exact description, just for the anime to come out and be a complete flop. Many thought webtoon anime adaptations would take over the world back in 2020, with Tower of God and God of High School, just for both of them to be extremely underwhelming. God of High School was especially disappointing since, despite its basic name, it had an incredibly fun story to read that featured high-octane battles, mind-blowing lore, and characters that kept you coming back for more and more. Just for the anime adaptation to throw all the best aspects of God of High School out the window, and instead attempted to be a Sakuga compilation spanning over an entire season. This skepticism doubled when I heard Season 1 of Lord of the Mysteries would be adapting the entirety of its first volume. A first volume that spans over 500 pages and 213 chapters is planned to be adapted within 13 anime episodes. So you're telling me that an incredibly large-scale, complicated story that has an equally complicated power system will properly set up the story and explain the power system smoothly within 13 episodes? There's a higher chance of an old dog learning to ride a unicycle. On the flip side, China has been successfully breaking onto the mainstream anime scene with a wide assortment of compelling donghua that many have enjoyed, like Link Click. China also has a boatload of animation manpower for creating ambitious shows like Lord of the Mysteries. Based on the previews, it seemed like no matter what, Lord of the Mysteries would at least look visually stunning. When the first two episodes of Lord of the Mysteries came out, I cast aside my doubts and sat down, waiting to be impressed and have my mind blown. Instead, I was met with an anime that was actively pushing me away from watching it. From the first two episodes, the message I got from Lord of the Mysteries' anime was, if you're not an original fan of this novel and know nothing, this show isn't for you, and it'll never be for you. I was getting information jammed into my head at speeds I hadn't experienced before, as if I was a netrunner whose brain got tossed into an air fryer. As someone who's a fan of detailed, complex power systems, worlds, and plots, I was bummed out that the show that had all these elements wasn't even trying to properly introduce me to them. I've done the song and dance of eagerly jumping into a new anime, learning about its power system and world, just for it to be a rushed mess and be a one-and-done season. I was not about to do that again for Lord of the Mysteries. But as weeks passed by and more episodes came out, Lord of the Mysteries remained in my mind, not out of scorn, but out of longing. I saw insane fight scenes week in and week out posted on my timeline with comments filled with hardcore fans crying tears of joy as they watched some of their favorite moments in fiction get adapted in superb quality. The voice inside of my head telling me to try and pick Lord of the Mysteries back up, this time with a mindset that's willing to pause episodes repeatedly and write detailed notes about what's going on, rung louder and louder until I stumbled across a post detailing the plan for Lord of the Mysteries' anime. Lord of the Mysteries Season 1 wasn't going to be a trial run. The entire franchise was going to be given the respect it had earned, and the studio adapting it, BC May Pictures, confirmed a 10-year roadmap for Lord of the Mysteries that'll adapt all 8 volumes of Lord of the Mysteries, wrapping up by 2035. I had only seen this kind of roadmap for billion-dollar franchises like the MCU, but here Lord of the Mysteries was getting the same treatment. After finding out this news, my heart lit like a flame, my mouth watered, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and a level of excitement I seldom felt coursed through every vein of my body. I was used to new exciting anime franchises that weren't based out of Japan to end up as purely potential projects, and over time, this mindset made me subconsciously put up a wall against these adaptations and assume the worst for them. For the first time with Lord of the Mysteries, the immense potential for a modern epic was finally being realized in anime form. The work I'd have to put into understanding Lord of the Mysteries would pay itself off if the story was as good as everyone says it is. This would be a franchise spanning 10 whole years, and I knew that once I grasped a decent understanding of the setting, I'd be able to experience a decade of peak fiction. So I excitedly jumped back to the start of Lord of the Mysteries, hoping to kindle a flame in me that would stay furiously lit for years to come. Before I get into the details, web novel readers, please tell me if I'm getting anything wrong or if I've missed anything. I'm also curious to hear if any of the explanations given clash with what's in the novel. The first couple episodes of Lord of the Mysteries are genuinely rough. This is a combination of various factors. It's very obvious early on that the direction of Lord of the Mysteries' anime was to speed through the beginning, which I assume was slow and had plenty of exposition in the web novel, so that an exciting fight or an event happens within the first 3 episodes. Audiences aren't patient and usually only give up to 3 episodes before they decide to drop a show. If they click on Lord of the Mysteries, read its description, and are expecting a Victorian steampunk adventure filled with twists, turns, and tussles, they'll be sure to click away by episode 3 if the main character is still yapping unfolding through exposition. Lord of the Mysteries begins in pure chaos, with a young man named Joel Mingre, who has seemingly isekai to a parallel reality in a city named Tingen in the Lowen Kingdom of the Northern Continent, where he's now in the body of a history graduate named Klein Moretti, who appears to have ended his own life due to a particular notebook. Within the first couple of minutes of the first episode, I was introduced to the world of Beyonders, the path of the divine, and epochs, all during an extremely intense scene where a panicked main character is trying to figure out why there's a bullet wound in his temple, while it felt like there was a bullet lodged in mine. I had initially irritatedly trudged through these details the first time I watched Lord of the Mysteries, but the second time around I made sure to pause repeatedly and write down these details. Why? Because I knew they would all matter. I knew that remembering these moments wouldn't be a waste of time because later on, everything would be addressed, no matter how complicated everything sounds initially. By the end of the first episode, Klein had been recruited by magical police who call themselves the Nighthawks, so he can figure out who he is, where he is, why everyone wants this notebook he knows nothing about, and why his gray fog has allowed him to summon people from across this foreign world, while also masking his fate. The only thing I could recognize and count on was my persona-backed knowledge of tarot cards. After joining the Magic Op Nighthawks, Klein learns more about the rules and politics of this world as he plays magic detective for various odd cases that started occurring after he arrived, hoping to find out who was pulling the strings of fate behind a massive doomsday event within his city's jurisdiction. This is an extremely gross simplification of the plot of Lord of the Mysteries, and even then, the story sounds very ambitious. My favorite aspect of Lord of the Mysteries is its ambition. Where most stories have basic world building, power systems, and politics to establish a setting for the main characters to go on an adventure in, Lord of the Mysteries puts immense care in all of the little details of its story. I realized this mainly with the power system of Lord of the Mysteries and how it's geniusly interwoven with other major story elements. The power system of Lord of the Mysteries is simply put crazy. It is so intricate, so detailed, so unlike any power system I've seen before. It revolves around 22 different pathways, all with 9 sequences called the Path of the Divine. The lower the sequence number, the stronger the Beyonder. The 22 pathways are all held by different gods who are worshipped by different religious groups that are introduced throughout the story. Pathways have different strengths when it comes to combat, mysticism, etc., and they are all extremely varied. The Nighthawks, the organization Klein is in, are a part of a church that worships the Evernight goddess, who helms the Darkness pathway, which has powers related to the night and sleep. Klein himself is in the Fool pathway, which is about fooling perceptions and reality. Thanks to this pathway, Klein is proficient in divinations, illusions, and manipulation. To advance sequences, one needs to find the formula and ingest a potion that contains a special material called a characteristic. Then, they need to employ the acting method to fully digest the potion while searching for the potion formula for the next sequence. Beyonders also need to endure harsh side effects from ingesting the potion, like hallucination and paranoia. If they're not able to handle these side effects, they may lose control and become grotesque monsters themselves. Losing control is usually how most Beyonders perish, with older Beyonders being more susceptible, especially as their mental strength deteriorates. Beyonders who take severe spiritual damage by doing things like looking at the face of a god are also very likely to lose control, which we see throughout Season 1. The acting method entails that one needs to fully act in their role of their sequence, like Klein, who initially started as a seer and went regularly to a divination club so he could fully internalize being a seer and fully digest his potion. The acting method is a really cool concept. When it was first introduced, I thought it was going to be a gimmick. In fact, I thought the complexity of the power system was going to be a gimmick overall. After all, 22 pathways with 9 different sequences per pathway means the author would have to come up with 198 different roles that all have different abilities while also maintaining the theme of the pathway they belong to. Advancing sequences isn't just a basic power boost either. It fundamentally changes a Beyonder's power and character. When I found this out, I assumed that Lord of the Mysteries was going to mostly focus on a few pathways, mainly Klein's Seer pathway, while mostly disregarding the others and only showing high sequence users near the end of the story, like what many stories do with huge power systems. To my great surprise, Lord of the Mysteries looks like it doesn't do this at all. Throughout the first season, Klein runs into different hostile Beyonders that belong to different churches and are advancing through their pathways unknown to us, all wrapped up in schemes that don't involve the Evernight goddess yet. I got to see members of the Demoness pathway, which is centered around assassination and catastrophe, progress through their sequences by transitioning into women once the pathway required it. Elements like these make each pathway truly stand out and lets me know that each of these 22 pathways has an extremely rich history behind it and complex power structures that I can't even begin to fathom. This isn't even mentioning supplemental elements to the power system, which are very layered, like artifacts and rituals. Lord of the Mysteries brilliantly blends this power system with the history of its world, which brings me to my favorite aspect of this series, the world. When it comes to the pinnacle of world building in anime, my mind immediately jumps to 2 popular titles, One Piece and Tower of God. Within one season, Lord of the Mysteries impressed me so much with its world building that I'm willing to put it alongside those 2 titles if it continues at this rate. The rich history of Lord of the Mysteries is immediately apparent within the first few episodes. The story currently takes place during the 5th epoch, the Iron Age. Unlike many stories that don't really delve into history apart from a few notable events that shape the current era, Lord of the Mysteries makes sure to establish that each of these epochs have a deep history that spans centuries before cataclysmic events ushered in the next one. The first epoch was the Age of Chaos, the second was the Dark Epoch, the third epoch was the Cataclysm Epoch, the fourth was the Epoch of the Gods. During each of these epochs, secret organizations were formed, gods fought, languages were created, and events that would affect the rest of time occurred. These epochs aren't just spans of 1,000 years that I'll forget as time goes on. Each of them is very important, and small details about them are constantly being fed to the viewer so that they can get a firmer grasp on the world and its history. The 22 pathways all correspond to different gods that are worshipped by different orders. The Nighthawks worship the Evernight goddess, the Aurora order worship the true creator, and the Moses ascetic order worships knowledge itself, which eventually manifested into an evil entity. Different orders have been established during different epochs. Older orders have had their ideology shift as centuries pass by, and newer orders are formed as offshoots. In the current day, there are 7 orthodox gods in the northern continent that are widely accepted to be worshipped, such as the Evernight goddess. Within the city of Tingen itself, most people end their conversations with "Praise the Lady," referring to the goddess herself. Small details like these really made Tingen feel alive, and also gave me immense faith in exploring the rest of the world, such as different cities and continents. Lord of the Mysteries doesn't even disregard philology either. Languages have evolved over epochs, and with Klein being a history major who studied these languages, details about the evolution of language within the world of Lord of the Mysteries are revealed, immensely aiding its world building and also foreshadowing the plot. Klein is proficient in Ancient Faesak, the common language in the 4th epoch that is derived from the Jotun language. Ancient Faesak ended up becoming the basis of languages Loan, Faesak, Intis, and Highlander. These details make me love the world of Lord of the Mysteries so much and assure me that no stone is being left unturned here, and that the history of the spoken language will become a vital element later on. I thought that Lord of the Mysteries would stay mostly contained to the cities in the Loan Kingdom of the northern continent, since it put so much effort into giving Tingen a distinct cultural identity. I soon realized that every inch of this incredibly sculpted world was going to be explored similarly, especially after seeing who Klein summons at the end of the season and how shocked he was by the language they spoke. Tingen wasn't just a one-off, and realizing that genuinely gave me goosebumps. As for the plot itself, it suffered a little bit due to the fast pacing, but was able to deliver an incredible story. The entire season had me on my toes trying to figure out what Klein's Grey Fog does, why the Antigonist notebook is so important, and why so many different orders belonging to different pathways are involved with the incidents at Tingen City. The themes of battling fate, religious zeal, the cost of power, and finding one's identity resonated heavily, and they were expounded upon with great detail within the story and will continue to evolve. I appreciated that the first volume focused on low-level Beyonders and didn't throw them to the side for the sake of power progression. I was able to spend an entire season with Dunn Smith and the Nighthawk crew, got to see how they operated and leveraged their unique abilities and artifacts against stronger Beyonders. I was especially fascinated by the politics of the different religious orders and how they operate. Some organizations like the Nighthawks are technically with the police and have actual jurisdiction in law, yet the average Joe wouldn't know it's a gang of Beyonders. Others are tied to evil entities and must constantly maneuver under a veil of secrecy. Within organizations themselves, there are different power struggles going on, and it's implied that the higher up Beyonders are on a plane my mere Season 1 peasant brain wouldn't even be able to comprehend. Knowledge about digesting potions and advancing sequences is heavily safeguarded within organizations, which makes me very curious about the past and any wars that occurred due to a large mass of Beyonders quickly ascending through the sequences. Season 1 did a great job when it came to portraying these high-level Beyonders, since they didn't show up often, but when they did, I was truly terrified despite knowing about Klein's Hack's abilities. The gravity of advancing sequences, especially higher ones, dawned on me at the end of Season 1. It feels like mountains need to be moved and civilizations need to be crushed to even get the materials to progress at higher sequence levels, which makes me ponder even more what these high-level Beyonders did to achieve the strength they currently possess. Although I've never read the Lord of the Mysteries web novel, I felt like a lot of the cut content for the anime were character interactions and more detailed exposition. Although I enjoyed Klein's dynamic with the Nighthawks in general, there were emotional moments later on that honestly didn't hit because I didn't spend much time seeing the Nighthawks interact normally. There were a few funny moments that felt straight up awkward because this rapport between characters wasn't properly built up. Like, there's a recurring joke of Leonard thinking Klein is super interested in his secret when in reality Klein finds him to be a narcissistic weirdo, but the joke didn't really land for me. Klein also goes to a divination club to master his acting as a seer, and it felt like the divination club should have had a lot more screen time than it actually did. It felt more like a hyperbolic time chamber for Klein to level up in, rather than an actual club with breathing characters, which I assumed it was in the novel. It isn't like the first season is devoid of emotional scenes though. Especially near the end of the season, pacing felt like it had finally stabilized, and there were some heartbreaking moments that were adapted perfectly. One of the worries I had throughout the first season about Klein was the rate at which he was digesting his potion and advancing his sequence. He was surrounded by peers who took years to go from sequence 9 to 8, yet he was able to do it within a few months. As the season progressed and Klein did things like gaze directly at a god while asserting he can challenge them, I became increasingly worried about his arrogance being rewarded. Thankfully, this was all intentional, and the payoff in the final episode was so incredible that I sat there after the episode ended, blankly staring at a black screen while trying to process what I had just witnessed. I was eager to dive into the history of the next city Klein would be going to, excited to learn more about the Grey Fog and sequence progression, hungry to get a glimpse of the bag of a high-level Beyonder, but alas, I will have to wait. Now that Lord of the Mysteries is a confirmed success, I have full faith in future seasons to give me the small character interactions I desire, just so I can enjoy the characters within the story that much more. Not giving up on Lord of the Mysteries is one of the best decisions I made this year. I know there's a lot of people out there who aren't interested in reading web novels and are frustrated by the anime because it sounds so cool. Yet the first couple of episodes feel like scalding water being poured onto your frontal cortex. Based on what I've seen, the Lord of the Mysteries community has been extremely helpful explaining the basics of the world and power system so it's as digestible as possible for new viewers. If you're ever confused, there's plenty of amazing resources out there that don't spoil everything. I urge you, give Lord of the Mysteries another chance. It's worth that extra effort. If you don't, you might just be missing out on a decade-long diamond of a donghua.